Hey everybody, welcome back to Music and Wood. Today we're going to look at retubing and biasing this Blackstar HT5RH. It is a 5-watt head, and it's the Mark I model, not the later Mark II model. So what we'll need is a multimeter to read the voltage as we're changing the bias on the tubes, some screwdrivers to get in there, possibly a plastic spludger to move things around or tap on the tubes. Then also, of course, you'll need tubes to replace the old tubes with. In this case, we're going to use a 12AX7 from Tungsol and then also a 12BH7 from Electro Harmonics for this Blackstar head. The types of tubes that you'll need for your amplifier might vary. Read the manual or also check online. Another thing to be aware of is there's high voltage inside of here. So if you're uncomfortable with going into the guitar amplifier and potentially navigating through a high voltage situation, I would definitely seek help from a professional to retube your amplifier rather than attempting it yourself if you might be any bit uncomfortable. With that said, let's move forward to taking apart the amplifier head. For the Blackstar HT5 head, there are 4 screws in the back holding the back plate on, and we also have 4 screws on the bottom which hold in the electronics carriage. So what we'll need to do is remove these 4 screws to get access to the tubes on top, and then remove the bottom screws so that we can slide out the actual electronics and get access to the potentiometer to measure the biasing voltage as well as change it when we put the new tubes in. Let's go ahead and take this apart. We've got the back off now, and we can see right inside there. And what we see is our transformer here, one of them. Then we've got the power transformer here. So that's the output transformer. Then we've got one tube back here and another tube over here. It looks like the preamp tube is behind this transformer, and our 12BH7 output tube is the one right there in the center. So we'll go ahead and take the screws out at the bottom and then remove this electronics carriage. Might be a little bit stuck in there, so we can help push it out from the front. All right, now we can pull this out. Be careful when removing this because the bottom is exposed and you don't want to touch any capacitors which might still have a high voltage charge. You would get an unpleasantly shocking surprise. Let's go ahead and replace these tubes now. Okay. So, as we were looking here, we've got the 12AX7 over here and the 12BH7 right here. It's best to generally use a rag to pull these out so that if it does break, it doesn't cut your hand to shreds. So let me grab a rag. Almost fell off the chair, but now I have a rag. So you want to kind of firmly hold and jiggle just a bit to get the tube out. We'll do that. Get this one out here. Excellent. Both tubes removed. Let's go ahead and put the new tubes in. When replacing the tube, you'll see that a pin is missing from the bottom of the tube. You can use that to align the tube into the socket when you're inserting it. You'll need to use some force to push it in, but make sure not to misalign and use the wrong amount of force and potentially bend these pins. Also, you should probably use a rag to protect your hands when inserting this, because if it were to shatter, you don't want to shred your hand. You should be able to press that in firmly, feel it seat into the socket. We'll do the 12BH7 here. Okay. Line that up in the socket. Then insert that. Again with some force. Make sure it's in there, not too much though. Great. We now have two tubes inserted into their sockets. It is time to bias the amplifier. We're going to have to flip it over and clip on our multimeter to then measure the voltage. We should also plug a speaker in, and when we come to balance it, then we'll plug a guitar in. To start the power tube biasing process, begin by plugging in the power to the amplifier and your speaker. At this point, you should be extremely cautious when inside of the amplifier, and be careful not to touch any capacitors or any other things really inside of there, because you definitely don't want to get shocked. It's quite dangerous. What we're going to do is attach the ground on the multimeter to the case ground. Then I'm going to select DC voltage on the multimeter, and the particular test point for this amplifier is going to be on resistor 33 on the cathode side of the power tube. You'll want to check your manual for where to take your measurement when biasing your power tubes. So with the speaker plugged in and power provided, let's go ahead and turn on the amplifier. And then we'll take a reading from the resistor here. We can see that that voltage is rising while the tube's warming up. Alright, so we'll just let this warm up for a moment. Looks like from what I saw there, it's a little bit high. We're going to want to adjust for this circuit the voltage at that test point to around 46 millivolts. So while the amp is warming up, we'll set our range to millivolts on our multimeter so that it doesn't jump around and try to scan the ranges. Let's take another reading here. We're at 92 millivolts. That's definitely a little bit high. So, and then there is a potentiometer for balance and a potentiometer for bias on the board. We're going to turn the bias potentiometer and measure the change in voltage on our test point. Give it a small turn to find the direction that you need to turn that potentiometer. Small adjustments do change the voltage pretty quickly. So we're going to bring this down to around 46 millivolts. All right. We'll let that sit for just a second, warm up a little bit more, and then test again. 46. Yep, okay. Well, that's looking pretty good. Pretty solid there at 46 millivolts. Next, we can change the balance, and what we'll need to do for that is to plug a guitar in, and then we'll adjust the balance to where we get the minimum amount of hum coming out of the speaker. I'm going to grab a guitar and plug it in. Well, I've come back now and plugged in a guitar, and it actually sounds pretty fine coming out of the speaker right now. So we will just probe the test point again to see if the bias voltage changed, and it looks like, yep, it's gone down just a tad as it's warmed up. So we'll go ahead and minutely adjust this potentiometer again. There we are. Back to 46 millivolts. Yep, 46 millivolts there on the test point. Great, well, I'd say that that is biased now. Let's go ahead and just play with it just a second and see how it sounds. And there you have it. That's how you retube and bias a valve tube amplifier. I'm going to say it again. Definitely, if you feel uncomfortable working in a high voltage electronics environment, you should not attempt this yourself. Instead, call a repair technician so that they can replace the tubes in your amplifier for you. That way you'll stay safe and stay alive so you can enjoy the new tubes in your amplifier. I'm going to plug this in and jam out, break these tubes in, and have a real fun time. So I'll see you next time on Music and Wood.